Okay. All right. Hello. So my name is Julian, and this is my submission for my field exam for the Cornell Master Beekeeping course. This is my little backyard apiary. We have 5 hives right now, 5 out of 6 overwintered. So we lost one overwintering. I think it's likely due to mice and a little bit of a higher count, bigger population, which we actually found usually has some more issues. But the 5 we have here today are all doing great. We can see the really tall guy, that's one I'm going to be inspecting today for the field exam. The other 4, they're not as interesting, so I'm not doing them today. They're still requeening from being split earlier. So we split it and we took the queen into the new nuke. And so for 3 of these hives, the 3 bigger guys, they were split on April 14th. So the queen should have just about come back now from mating after emerging, from emergency cell. And then, might have started laying eggs, things like that, but it'd definitely be no cap brood for me to look at. So to really show everything in a hive, I'm going to be doing the bigger one. The really small guy to the left was split more recently, just about a week ago. So that's would have cap brood, but they're probably still just emergency queen cells, maybe just emerging. So I don't really want to disturb that right now. And so for a big hive, there hasn't really been any brood break. It didn't look that strong, honestly. Going into the spring is one of the weaker ones of these 5. So we split the other ones, but now this one's become really strong. So just last week, I think it's the 29th is where we did a demery. So it's a lot of work, but I found it works pretty well if I don't want to increase the number of hives I have. I didn't really want to split into 2 hives, so found the queen, put her in the bottom with a little food, 2 frames of uncapped brood or eggs, and then the rest of it is just foundation. Empty medium above that. And the old brood nest is above that. And then I went in about a week ago and removed all of the queen cups or queen cells, if there's any wet cells that they made, because now that brood nest is so far from the queen, sometimes workers get a little confused. So all of that's already done, and the plan today is just to go straight to the bottom, brood box right there. Look at the queen, look at the brood, and then we'll take a look at the top and look at honey, pollen, just see how the rest of the hive is doing. And yeah, so that's the plan. And then with this kind of demery setup, usually what I do is, rather than maintaining this all the time, just keep rolling it, which is a lot of work. I'll probably get rid of that box and expand the queen excluder up once the bottom brood box fills up quite a bit more. But it's only been 2 weeks since that's happened. It's very unlikely the queen has completely filled the bottom box all by herself just now. So I probably won't be doing that today. And as for some pros and cons of the setup as a whole, the pros that this is south-facing, and it's in an area where there's not much disturbance to any of the neighbors or any people that are just walking by on the street. There's also a lot of flowers in the area. We have a lot of goldenrod just kind of lying around, although it's not quite time for that yet. There's also a lot of gardens nearby. There's just a lot of gardeners in this area. So some cons is that it's in a pretty shady setup. This tree has actually grown a lot since we put the bees here, which is a little annoying. Rather not have that. It's also a little bit cloudy out today, so not the best day, but still quite good. And as for the, another con maybe is that the hives are all really close. There's probably a good amount of drifting, makes it a little harder to control for varroa. But yeah, we can get right into it. Bees are really out and about today. There's a ton of activity. Pretty happy to see that. And hopefully that means that there's a good flow, and my equipment probably could do with a little more cleaning. Cleaned it off January, but honestly, it's already a lot of propolis on it, and so that's something I could do. As for the box themselves, they're doing pretty good. The wood at the bottom is warping a little bit, so the hives, originally they're all leaning forward a little bit, so there's not as much moisture buildup. But some of them, the way the ground has shifted and the wood has expanded from snow and dry and humid conditions, now some of them are leaning back a little bit, so I might put some wedges in the back so that the hives have a little bit of forward tilt. I'm going to get started after the inspection. Just going to go behind all the other hives. So once again, usually I would peek at the super first because this hive is so big, so tall. And right now I'm smoking the entrance a few times. Hopefully that's visible. But this hive is, so big, so tall. I'm going to go straight down to the very bottom initially, and then I'll take a peek at one of these boxes on the way up. Since there's not much to see there, I checked all of last week to make sure that there aren't any queen cups, so that there's not going to be accidentally 2 queens in this one hive. So little smoke there, usually like to do. I've cracked it open, puffing in a little smoke into the side, a little more of the entrance. All right. And I don't see, sometimes I've noticed small hive beetles. I don't really see any here on the inner cover, which is pretty good. It's pretty old inner cover. Just gonna put this down over here, probably. Maybe, don't want to block the entrance, but I usually like using the space next to here. And so just taking a peek down here, since I'm not really gonna be looking, there's not much activity. And that kind of makes sense, since when we did the demery, we added a ton of space to the hive. But in my experience, I found that if you remove like this super at the top, it can still cause them to swarm, since it'll still feel like they lost space. So now here is where it really starts. I'm probably gonna smoke at every layer going down. Such a big hive. And then we can see, before I smoked and they started scurrying around, we probably had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's probably 8 full swarms of bees. It's a big hive to be filling up all of its space. And so there's probably a bunch of capped brood here. And you know, demery you can't do too early in the year, otherwise you would have chilled brood. But I'm gonna go all the way down to the bottom, nice and quick, to avoid having the bees get too mad. If I looked at every single frame in all of these boxes, well, I just would not do that, but a pretty heavy box as well. If I looked at every single frame in all of these boxes, they would almost certainly get pretty upset with me, just purely because population is so big, and there's no point in doing it since I know there's not much interesting happening here. I did most of that hard work about a week ago. So on the way up, we'll talk more about it, but obviously I see workers in drones. Some burr comb forming here, and so once again, this is just an empty medium. So I know for a fact there's nothing in here other than foundation and drawn comb. Right, and all of these I'm comfortable stacking like this because I know the queen isn't there at all, so she's not going to run to some box I don't know. And now a little more smoke. Okay. And now, yeah, I kind of hate taking this off. It always kind of bounces. It's a little annoying. Yeah, no way to avoid having some bees shocked. Okay, so now I can kind of see that the queen is almost definitely in this area. I'm going to take out one frame on the side. I'm going to look for her. You know, there's kind of a clear cluster of bees in this hive. I also saw a bee carrying pollen earlier, which is also another good sign, since there's likely to be a need for that. That frame was a little stuck, but I got it out. Oh wow, really old dark frame, really chewed up. Probably just something we found in the basement. Honestly, probably can rotate this out. We've been pretty bad about rotating out 2 frames every year, so something to improve on. And not something I usually did in the past few years, especially as it's gotten bigger. I'm gonna go right down the middle here, see if I can find her. If I can't, hopefully I can still find eggs or a brood at a few different stages of life. I'm gonna go right for this wood frame right here. All right, look at that nice cap brood. So the pattern looks good. Immediately is what I notice. It looks like everything is being full. Queen could certainly be here. And I noticed a lot of younger larvae on the edge of his frame. I noticed some worker with pollen bags full, so there's a lot of pollen likely coming in. I see pollen in this little corner up here. So hopefully we can catch that on camera. Yeah, that's a little bit of pollen in the corner. And let me see. There's also eggs down here. So the very bottom of the frame, where that worker is with the pollen bee bags, with the pollen. Yeah, and also there's that dry queen cup, probably an emergency one because of, or it could even be a swarm one because of its location near the bottom, but it's dry, so I'm not concerned about anything. If it was wet, if I saw queen cells, that would be an immediate sign. Here, let me really try to capture the eggs. So if you zoom in right here, yeah, right in this area, you can see that there's eggs at the very bottom of the frame. And also, if you go up a little bit to this larva, we can see based on the royal jelly amount that this is likely pretty healthy, yeah. Yeah, so there's a decent amount of royal jelly in those, I would say. And it's a very nice pattern, starting from the middle of the frame and going outwards. We can see the mature brood getting younger and younger. So overall, just looking at the whole frame, we can see that it looks quite decent. The pattern is very good. The bees do have some hygienic behavior. You can see there's 1 or 2 cutouts kind of in the middle there. But overall, I'm very, very happy with this brood frame. And And yeah, looking at the other side of the frame here now, it's totally chock pack full of eggs. So, for example, it's a good time to talk about workers too. Workers versus drones. But we can take a look, one more good look at eggs once again down here. There's a ton. Yeah, hopefully you can see down in there, there's little white dots. Camera's not super good. Yep, so I think you've captured those. Now we'll talk about workers versus drones. So you see there's a big drone right here, the big guy. And you can see, I think your glove is covering the camera a little bit, camera person. But yeah, we can see that the workers, smaller bodies, and the drone right now in frame has its nice big eyes, larger body, maybe a tiny bit longer, but the queen is the longest one with the shiny hairs thorax. We'll go looking for her now. But overall, if I saw this just in a void, sometimes I'd just be closing up. But let's take a look at 4 frames in total, at least in the brood frame, just in the brood chamber, just to show kind of a more detailed view of what's going on. Oh, this one's really heavy. Wow, so very, very nice looking brood frame. So you can see there's, if you look at the frame as a whole, there's just a tiny bit of pollen up top in these corners near my hands. If this were a 2 deep brood chamber, I would expect to see a ring of pollen, an arch of pollen around it, and then maybe honey on the very top. But it's just so packed with capped brood. And we can see where it's, you know, maybe just starting to emerge. There's a few drones around the edges. I'm not super concerned about that. It makes sense. Such a big hive that the queen is interested in laying drones. This is extremely heavy. It's just super full. And you know, I see some spottiness, but I'm not overly concerned by this amount. Although these aren't directly like VSH queens, they do have some of the genetics in them. I'm not sure exactly what generation it is. And you know, when I first started beekeeping, my very first nuke, which, you know, some of my queens might still have the genetics of, is of like unknown genetic origin. So not completely certain, but based on my experience and, you know, kind of looking at past pictures I've taken, that's a pretty healthy level of spottiness. It's not a huge issue with that. And also I'm not noticing any signs of disease, right? So if there's American foul brood or any kind of other issues, once again, a really clean frame. We can see the brood is starting to be capped. It's going from inside to out. There's very few missed ones. There may be, once again, some hygienic behavior where some were removed, but I'm not really seeing any misses. And once again, capped brood and larvae, and everything is just totally being filled up here. It's quite good. That's a 3rd frame. I'm gonna look at one more, last one, just to finish things off. See if we can see the queen. But if not, I've already described her. And so I'm not really needing to see the queen today. I've seen those eggs, and to me that's a good enough sign that she's present, and also that pattern just looks fantastic. So I've had the hive open for quite a while now. I think if I wasn't talking, I could go a tiny bit faster. They're getting a little bit upset, but ton of pollen in this one. And so we already saw a ton of pollen carriers. If you look at this section of a frame here, there's quite a few bees with pollen that are going around. All right, so I'm gonna head back up now. A lot more pollen this side. Overall, just looks great. Didn't find the queen today, but I saw eggs, so no big deal. I explained the different types of workers. Didn't see any signs of brood diseases, saw a great looking pattern, and all that tells me that everything is going pretty well. I'll talk about Varroa in the end and a little more about things within for mite control. But for now, before I have, you know, all of these boxes really are open right now. Before I have that open for too long, I'm gonna try to get things packed up here. And yeah, it's been unfortunate because it was sunny just a moment ago, and now it's been cloudy for the whole time pretty much. So we've got to get this queen excluder and just give these a little push, try not to crush any of them. There we go. This one is empty, and I can feel just by the weight there's going to be nothing interesting here. This one is pretty decently heavy, and I will show so the top super is pretty uninteresting because we've added the new deep at the bottom for the queen to be in. I think that if I see, and I did see a lot of pollen already, but if I were to see some new nectar flow, it would likely be in this box. So I'm going to show a few frames from this one as well. And once again, since they overwintered with this box, I'm probably not going to observe any new wax being made. However, just based on the time of year, the things I know are blooming now, and also the number of bees that are flying in and out. And yeah, this is really tightly packed. I got to clean off some propolis, there's like to be great honey flow. And if you look, there's a ton of nectar in here. So yeah, I've confirmed that that's the case. It's just completely full of nectar. Honestly, it's pretty wild that that side is like that. This one is pretty much just empty comb. Once again, a bit dark. We could do better with that. I do see a small hive beetle here, but I'm not particularly concerned. With the hive that this size, they're going to be able to manage it just fine. In the past, I've used oil traps, and they've worked pretty well for me. But you know, I only do that if I see a concerning number, usually when I open the top inner or outer covers. So yeah, honestly, I think there's not too much more to look at. I just saw a bunch of nice nectar coming in. I just saw young brood, brood of all stages. The only thing that would have been nice, maybe just for a video, would have been the queen, but I'm still pretty happy with everything. And yeah, this one, nice and light, not much going up here yet, but I have no issues with them defending the space. And yeah, so in a few weeks, I'll probably, what I'll do is I'll replace this medium, and I might move it and make it a super, but I'll basically let the queen come up to 2 deep boxes again. I think a 1 brood chamber, it gets a little stuffy. It makes more sense to have 2, but I want her to fill and really use the space of the full set of empty things I added in first. So yeah. Now inner cover goes on, outer cover goes on, and I can see if I forgot anything, and also talk a little bit about Varroa. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that the inspection went. The activity up front isn't unjustified. There's a ton of bees in the hive. Mainly it's queen right. I didn't see any signs of brood disease. I didn't see any big issues that could have been caused by Varroa, and I didn't get a chance to do it earlier this year. But I'd certainly do a mite count, since I haven't had a chance to do that yet. So I would do a mite count in about a day or 2 probably. It's a good time, end of a semester for me personally, so that works out. As for other Varroa treatment plans, unlike a lot of these other neighboring hives, which have had a nice brood break from doing split, this one hasn't had the same opportunity. So that's something I'll need to think about when I'm doing the count, and just realize that this one's probably gonna need some more attention later on. Definitely gonna do oxalic acid in late November, early December, like I usually do. And that's a big one that I find helps a lot. As for other things, I think overall this hive doesn't need any kind of immediate intervention. I didn't see any signs of swarming, and just to quickly go over, we saw maybe a dry queen cup at the very bottom there, but as for any queen cells, we didn't see any of those. There's nothing wet, and it wasn't really on the very bottom wooden bar of a frame. I still think it's probably emergency. It's still kind of centered in the frame, and those emergency queen cups I find are, even though I don't think my bees are Russians at all, they still make a good number of those, and they're kind of throughout the frame. The swarm ones are always at the very bottom, and the super seizure ones are at the top. And I didn't see either of those, so I'm not concerned about that. With the adults that I checked, I mean, just going down these boxes, the seams of bees are pretty much full all the way through in these 2 main boxes. And the very bottom, it was also quite packed. Maybe there's 4 seams on the right that weren't full, but that's not such a big deal. The queen was over there on the left, as expected. Or she should have been. That's where all the brood was. I just happened to miss her today. But just trying to figure out if I possibly missed anything here. I'll close everything up. But yeah, no signs of swarming. I don't want to increase too much more, and so that's why I kind of did this demery. And so the queen is stuck at the bottom, plenty of space. Brood pattern looks great, and honestly, yeah, I'd be pretty happy. We see good nectar flow, good pollen coming in. There's no other signs of malnutrition. The bees aren't, symptomatic for any kind of virus in the front. I don't see a big number of dead bees anywhere, and there aren't any other real visible pests. So I think that pretty much covers all my bases for everything that I checked from the inspection. It pretty much matches my expectation. I see a lot of the brood is coming along nicely since I moved the queen down there 2 weeks ago. And so some of it might be just starting to emerge. Most of it, a ton of it's capped, but there's also a lot of eggs. So good sign that the queen is still there. And yeah, so I think that covers how I do an inspection, especially on a larger hive. To save time, I'm definitely not frame by frame. I'm not assessing every frame. And I did do that early in the spring, and I will do that again later in the fall. But when it's big, it's growing like this, there's good flow, a lot of pollen, a lot of bees in and out, a lot of activity. And also it's not even the sunniest day. I think, you know, definitely not gonna touch every single frame, just looking at what's important and also checking on the nectar after. And I think that pretty much sums up my inspection. And so now I'm gonna go, these little guys probably be a little easier, just making sure that the queen has come back. And you know, it's possible the queen in these other hives hasn't quite mated yet or is still mating, and so I might not see eggs just yet, but hopefully I will, since those were split on April 14th, 26 days ago. But yeah, that sums up my video for the field exam for Cornell Master Beekeeping course, and thank you for watching.